In the world of AI and other technical advances, the mechanics of money, the IQ side of money, or you might think of this as exterior finance, is becoming more and more automated, is becoming more and more of a commodity. That's why the EQ side, to help clients uncover the interior side of money, emotional intelligence is becoming far more important. Because while an AI software or tool can give us any advice in seconds for pennies, it can't hold space for us to process something that it didn't even know that we were thinking. It can't notice that I was holding back tears when I answered the question. So as a review, emotional intelligence it's got 4 components to it. And we can think of this through a 2x2 grid. So on the top, we've got myself, and we've got other people. Across the side, we've got our awareness of emotions and the management of those emotions. So in the first grid, this is self-awareness. This is me becoming more aware of my own emotions. In the awareness of others' emotions, that's where empathy lies. That's me getting a handle on what you are experiencing and what somebody else is experiencing. I'm recognizing and noticing the emotions in other people. Under self and management, this is where we get self-regulation. This is the ability to regulate my own emotions. And then relational skill is in the fourth box here, which is using emotions, using my emotions, using other people's emotions to move forward. So let's take a look at each of these. So self-awareness, if you've got this whole spectrum of awareness, my emotions are in there, and so are other people's. So those first 2 boxes, becoming more aware of my emotions and becoming more aware of other people's emotions, is 2 of the 4 sections. And this is important because a lot of us don't really have a high vocabulary for what we're feeling. We don't have a high vocabulary for what we experience or what we notice. In fact, most of us live our lives thinking that we either feel good or we feel bad. And it's if we feel bad, some groups of people will say, well, I feel bad, therefore I'm angry. So they get to experience one emotion. Or I feel bad, therefore I'm sad. So they get to experience one emotion. You might get somebody to split that up into 4, mad, sad, glad, and afraid. But becoming more aware of the emotions I'm feeling and then more aware of the emotions you might be feeling is a powerful step towards building your EQ skills. Now, self-regulation. This is when we don't act on our emotions too quickly by default. So most of us, most of the time, we behave in ways we have no idea why. We don't know the motivation behind it. This is deep down in the elephant, if you're familiar with the elephant and the rider. So in the elephant, it experiences something and then it acts. The rider, the conscious mind, has no idea what's actually going on. So self-regulating emotions is to pause, take a step back, recognize the emotion, and then act in the most appropriate way possible. This doesn't mean ignore emotions. This doesn't mean never feel angry all the time. Right? Sometimes the appropriate action is an anger response. I feel anger, and then I still choose the best response based on that anger. So we're using our emotions in a way that we're more conscious of. We're becoming more aware of our emotions. And then finally, noticing emotions in other people and ourselves, but noticing emotions in other people and then acting skillfully using those emotions, that's EQ in action. That's bringing emotions to the table. We're not trying to be some kind of robot where we strip emotions out of the conversation. We want to use emotions. We want to understand emotions. We can challenge emotions. We can understand or try to understand why we might be feeling particular emotions, but we want to use them. Now, a lot of people might have this thought that, well, that's not something that I am. I don't have that. I'm not born with that. But that's a fixed mindset. Fixed mindset, your mind is fixed on something. You are fixed. You're etched in stone, so to speak. So the fixed mindset is that whoever I am is who I am. Think of that as nature. However I was born, that's who I am. And this goes way deeper than I can go into today. But be on the lookout for a future video about growth mindset and fixed mindset. Fixed mindset is I don't think that there's anything that I can do because that's not who I am. Growth mindset, on the other hand, this is that I can change. This is the nurture piece. So I was born a particular way, that's true, but I'm not etched in stone. I can change. So that growth mindset says I can learn. Skills are learnable. Right? So I can, it's the effort. It's not innate ability. So how can we learn to be more in tune with our emotions? Talked about it briefly earlier. We can become more aware of what emotions exist. We can increase our emotion vocabulary. You know, so instead of just feeling good and feeling bad, we can split it into 4: mad, sad, glad, and afraid. And we could even add more to this core. But then we can tune in to say, like, what's anger? What is it to be mad? Am I feeling betrayed? Am I envious? Do I feel frustrated? Am I annoyed? Am I furious? These are just a couple examples. But we can hone in on what we're actually feeling. Or maybe instead of just feeling sad, maybe I'm lonely or ashamed. Maybe I'm feeling hurt. Maybe I'm grieving something. Or maybe I feel powerless. Okay, so there's ways you can hone in on sadness. So it's not just mad. Feeling envious or frustrated is different from feeling annoyed, which is different from feeling furious. Just like feeling lonely is far different from feeling grief or from feeling powerless. Now, even doesn't have to be bad emotions. On the happy side, the glad side, are we hopeful, joyful, proud, respected, optimistic? Okay, so we can even get more in tune to the positive emotions. And then fear. Fear is a powerful motivator. So what are we afraid of, though? Are we insecure? Are we nervous? Frightened? Right? So nervous might be a light version of fear. Frightened might be a high version of fear. Do I feel weak? Do I feel vulnerable? Do I feel exposed? Okay, so this is how we can become more in tune, self-aware, is to become more aware of the emotion vocabulary. You might have even seen emotion wheels that exist. These are amazing because it's just like this, where you start with a 4 or 6 emotion core. Those are usually easier for people to identify. And then there's another layer where you hone in a little bit on whichever one you're feeling, and then you can hone in on it again. And that helps you bring words to what you're feeling. Now, it doesn't mean that those emotions are always right? We don't have to, just because we feel an emotion doesn't mean that it's right. I can be afraid that I'm going to lose all my money in the stock market, even though I'm not going to lose all my money in the stock market, unless I lock in those losses, all that stuff. So, this is how we become more self-aware. And then working with others, we can go back to this ABC model that I like. So there's an activating event, that's A, so that's the trigger, something happens. And then there's an emotional or behavioral consequence. I do something about it or feel something about it. Right? So that's the consequence. And it feels like it goes from A to C. Something happens and I do something. Something happens and I feel something. But the insight here is that there's a B, there's a belief in the middle. And that belief is the story that we tell ourselves. So this is how we can use the emotions with other people and ourselves. There's some self-regulation here too. This is to pause and say, what story am I telling myself? And that pause adds intention. It turns something that was default, automatic, and it turns it into something that's intentional. So we can become more aware of the vocabulary, and then we can become more aware of the story we're telling ourselves. And when we're working with other people, it's common, especially if you're niched, that you know what somebody should do, and yet you resist the writing reflex. You don't say it yet. In fact, you might even help them come to their own answer. So this is a way that we can not jump in, because if we jump in too soon with our solutions, we're not giving them a chance to process their emotions or feel what they're actually feeling. And then finally, we want to use emotions. We don't want to recognize the emotions so we can push them aside to make a perfectly logical, decision. We want to actually use emotions. So successful conversations come from using emotions, recognizing the emotions of myself and others, using those emotions to make the most appropriate decision. Hey, Derek Hagen here at Money Quotient. If this was interesting to you, if this is something that you want to learn more about, this is the kind of thing that we teach at Money Quotient. We teach financial advisors communication skills, facilitation techniques. We teach them about life planning. And basically, it all comes down to Stephen Covey's quote, "What good is climbing a ladder if it's leaning against the wrong wall?" Or if the ladder you're climbing isn't leaning against the right wall, every step you take just gets you to the wrong place faster. So we help advisors, help clients identify the right wall. So if this is interesting to you, head on over to moneyquotient.com. You can learn about our true wealth planning process, which is our model of financial life planning, which guides clients through 5 stages and 4 inquiry categories. These are the types of conversations that you have. So please let me know if you want to learn more, moneyquotient.com.